Okay, and we are live. Hello, and welcome to the MMA Live Chat Show. I'm Rich Davie, and it's Wednesday, June 18th, 2014. This is our Making MMA News version of the show, and we recorded the show live on YouTube. On today's show, we'll be discussing the big shakeup over at Bellator MMA, and on today's show, we have yours truly and Damon Gazelle. Thanks for taking part in another show, buddy. Go ahead and say hello to anybody that might be listening.
How's it going, Rich? How's it going, anybody that's going to watch?
Okay, thanks again for being here, buddy. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. You're making a racket there.
Yeah.
Okay, I woke up this morning and I saw the news about Bellator on Twitter. Founder, Chairman, and CEO Bjorn Rebney and President and Chief Operating Officer Tim Danaher are out over at Bellator immediately, according to a Spike TV press release. And the rumors started to swirl late Tuesday night after MMA journalist Josh Gross tweeted that, according to his sources, the former Strikeforce owner and CEO Scott Coker was being brought into the Bellator organization, and that the current CEO and founder Bjorn Rebney might be out or on the way out. Most MMA fans know that Scott Coker was the main man over at Strikeforce before Zuffa bought them out back in 2011. And there has been some chatter about Coker stepping up becoming the main man over at Bellator for a while now, but Coker was actually forced to remain quiet about things in the MMA world due to the sale of Strikeforce and his contractual agreement with Zuffa that obviously contained a sit-and-wait time frame where apparently he had to keep quiet about the sale of Strikeforce and any contractual agreements that were contained within, according to the agreement that they have with the buyout with Zuffa. Coker has virtually been a ghost on the MMA landscape, and he hasn't been seen at all basically since the closing of the Strikeforce tours back in 2013. And again, that was probably due to Coker's contract with Zuffa, and I guess that contract must have expired back in March of 2014, and that left Coker open to start exploring and pursuing new offers in the MMA industry. There's actually nothing in the Spike press release about Coker replacing Rebney, but news as to whether or not that's going to come to fruition will probably surface later today or tomorrow, which will be Thursday, June 18th, 2014. Okay, so this morning I woke up and I saw a tweet and I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. So around 9:45 a.m. today, Spike TV made things official by putting out that press release and putting out a tweet about it as well. Ariel Helwani then immediately, as soon as that came out, he went ahead and retweeted Spike TV just sent out a press release that Bjorn Rebney and President and COO Tim Danaher are leaving the organization effective immediately, which then kicked things into high gear. There were some quotes out there that were attributed to Rebney. Apparently there was some sort of friction regarding a difference in our views on the right strategic direction. And there was also a comment by Rebney stating that it is with bittersweet emotions that he announces that he's leaving the company that he founded. And to me, it sounds like it was, your classic style takeover by shareholders, with Viacom apparently being the majority shareholder of that organization now, or either that or Rebney willingly sold the company. But it sounds to me more like it's a hostile takeover. What do you think about this, Damon?
Yeah, I was pretty shocked to hear it too. Yeah, it's definitely a hostile takeover. It sounds like. I'm not sure if they had inflated the pay-per-view numbers or whatever. I had heard something about that, but I don't know if there was rumors or what. I think the direction it was going in was more of a WWE style, and I don't think as many people were probably taking it as serious. And I think they wanted it to be more like Strikeforce, be more, more legit, because you want it to be legit for it to be able to compete. Yeah, it seems odd that they got forced out, but anytime you take your company public, you're going to take that risk. That's probably one of the main reasons why the UFC won't do anything like that, and if they did, they would make sure that they wouldn't put enough stock out there to actually give up that controlling interest.
Exactly. Yeah, and I agree with you there. don't know. It's kind of odd that they would put themselves out there like that. Maybe he was a bit naive. You know, this was his first venture into MMA, so you know, maybe like you're saying, maybe they put out more shares and made more shares public, and then what was happening in the background is Viacom was scooping things up. And again, like you said there, I mean, they were moving more towards a WWE type mentality. And, you know, you're right. They should probably have, you know, become more like Strikeforce and more like even WSOF because they're not putting on that, you know, kind of like thug character mentality that they seem to be embracing over there at Bellator. So, yeah, that may have had something to do with it. But along with that, it probably also had something to do with the bad rep that you know Bellator is getting from you know the crooked dealings, or I don't know if you call them crooked dealings, but the less than savory dealings that Bellator has had and Rebney has had with you know contractual agreements, and primarily we're talking Eddie Alvarez in that situation. And there was a couple other fighters who had a problem with contract issues over there too, and that you know put a bad taste in fans' mouths, and fans really started bad mouthing the organization. I mean, I know when Bellator first came out, I watched them all the time, and then when they started that shit, moving away from you know the business model that they had initially, where they wanted to develop their own talent, they weren't going to take on UFC fighters and all this. You know, it seemed like a really great, interesting thing. You know, a totally different type of MMA organization from what Bellator or WC or Strikeforce was. And, you know, when they started drifting away from that, then they started picking up that, you know, kind of like circus mentality that you mentioned earlier, where, you know, they started embracing, you know, guys who were, you know, a bit of you know, trouble, you know, or had personal issues outside of the organization. I mean, we saw, you know, quite a few guys there get in trouble with the law over there, and then they had the guys come in and started acting like, you know, WWE with T. Ortiz and Rampage Jackson. It's like, you know, I just don't think for the hardcore MMA fans it's going to cut it. You know, if you want to watch WWE, then go watch WWE. Don't, you know, force that into, you know, the world of martial arts.
Yeah, wasn't I thought Rampage and Tito both did TNA Impact as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's wrestling. I think they're trying to cater more to the WWE crowd than the actual MMA crowd, and you know that's not really the direction they need to be going because one is fake, one is not. And with the fighters, yeah, when you're losing big name fighters that they have for themselves, that's never a good thing. You know, if they with fighters too is you can't just simply pass up on fighters that the UFC releases to try and make your own homegrown thing, because you know these if you want to be able to compete legitimately against the other organizations, you're going to have to pick up guys that have been with it. Maybe not the Titos, maybe not the Rampages, where you know there's obviously issues to begin with, but you know fighters like Jake Shields, you know, that the WSOF picked up. You know, that would have been a good pickup for Bellator.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. It looks like actually Bellator is just picking up names for the sake of picking up UFC names, and they're not really, or they weren't really putting all that much thought into saying, okay, well, is it viable to take a guy who's been around the sport for 15 years now and bring him over here? I mean, they're pretty much at the end of their career, so why would you even do something like that and put out the kind of money that you had to put out to, you know, scoop up fighters like that? So that probably had something to do with you know their demise over there as well, because you're
yeah,
talking about the chief executive officer and the chief operating officer both getting canned at the same time.
yeah, you need to bring in fighters that are actually going to bring competition to the organization, not necessarily name value. Uh, you know, Jake Shields, that they missed on that. You know, the UFC, yeah, he was a boring fighter to a lot, but to a lot of hardcore MMA fans, they weren't happy with Jake Shields being released, and it wasn't because of his win-loss streak. It was because he was not seen as an exciting fighter, and he is one of the elite fighters out there. You know, his wrestling and jiu-jitsu is some of the best in MMA, and you know, there's plenty of people they can scoop up uh, to make a legit organization. And when you try and distance yourself away from the legitimate aspect of MMA, you're kind of putting yourself out there as a spectacle to where some fans might buy into it. Some fans are going to look you over for that.
Well, history kind of reflects that MMA fans don't want to see that sort of heavy entertainment value incorporated into it. Because if you go back and you think about, before Strikeforce was around, there were actually Elite XC. That was the Showtime venture back then. And Elite XC was just a fucking joke, man. I mean, they had runways where the guys were coming out on runways and dancing girls all over the place. It was like, come on, that's not what the fucking sport is about. We don't want to see that kind of bullshit. We want to watch MMA fights. We don't want to watch dancing girls and, guys coming out with long, glitter robes on. It's like, come on, leave that shit for WWE and what they call pro wrestling, which I call entertainment wrestling. I'm just not a fan of that whole thing.
It is entertainment wrestling. It's sports entertainment. The WWE markets themselves as that. It's not a legitimate actual sport as the UFC or the WSOF is. It's meant for entertainment. It's predetermined wins and losses. Not where you would see with the UFC, the WSOF, and I think Bellator. A lot of people were questioning if those matches were actually legit.
Yeah, I know what you mean there because, we had those couple of situations. Well, I can't really think off the top of my head any of them that might have been what they call works. Do you have any in mind that you might be able to mention or reference that?
I thought they were kind of thinking maybe the King Mo Rampage fight was, because there was a lot of backlash about that when that fight was. The winner was announced.
I actually have Mo winning that one, which is rare because I'm more of a fan of Rampage than I am of Mo. So, I mean, I actually had Mo winning, but it was kind of close, I guess you could say.
Yeah, it's hard to tell in mixed martial arts. You get these horrible decisions.
Well, I can say this: it certainly wasn't anywhere on the verge of what Pride had become, where Pride was known for fixing fights. And I know a lot of hardcore Pride MMA fans aren't going to admit that, but all you have to do is go back and read history, and you'll see there several fighters that came out and said they were paid to take dives.
And if you look at Pride, Pride was a flashy, organization, and
yeah, I know.
Bellator was going that way.
Yeah, and I spoke with Heath Herring about that because Heath Herring came from the Pride era, and he kind of disagreed with me when I interviewed him a while back. And I said to him, do you think fans are really interested in that entertainment aspect? Well, and from his perspective, he's saying that that's what MMA is. It is entertainment. Well, yeah, it's entertainment to a degree, but it's more about, for hardcore MMA fans, it's more about the fighting than it is about the entertainment aspect,
Yeah, it's, if you think of like fixed boxing, I mean, people don't want to see that kind of stuff. They want to actually see who is the best fighter out there. Nobody. Well, there might be some people that actually like fighters and want to see them win no matter what. But when you're talking about a sport and a legitimate sport, it's got to have all authenticity. There can be no doubt about judges being bought or fighters being paid off or pre-planned fights or anything like that.
Yeah, I agree with you because even, it's so hard to say, when does that actually play, as a factor into things, because we've even seen some really freaky kind of decisions over at the UFC as of late as well, and it's like, what the hell is going on?
Diego Sanchez one to be.
Yeah. Is that a fix or is that just incompetency as far as the judges go?
I think it is incompetency. They were given the monitors, but if you're not wearing your glasses, you still ain't gonna see the monitor either. You know, I mean, there's so many decisions that I mean, there's a
It's like
lot that can go
Mr.
either way.
Magoo sitting over there at the judge's table. Oh, Magoo, you've done it again.
There's a lot that you could see going either way, but the horrible decisions, it just makes you wonder. It's like, what's going on? Is that legit, or is that just some judges that have absolutely no clue what they're supposed to
Well,
be
that one
judging?
judge, as you mentioned in the Diego Sanchez fight, I don't know what the hell that guy was on or what he was watching, but to score the fight, and I'm a big Diego Sanchez fan, love Diego Sanchez, so don't think
Oh
I'm
yeah,
a hater on the guy, but 30-27 Diego Sanchez, what the fuck were you on, man?
yeah. I think he took the Diego coming forward a little bit too much to heart as aggressiveness. There's
Well, I
one.
could see
There's
maybe
something
if the
about being
strikes were
aggressive.
equal, if the strikes were equal, that would play into factor, as far
Exactly.
as the outcome. But that wasn't the factor. I mean, there were more strikes, against Sanchez than for him.
Exactly. I think the rules themselves tend to mess judges up. Look at the Rampage Machida fight. Rampage was coming forward, but Machida was countering more and doing more damage. Even Rampage was surprised that he had won that fight. It doesn't. The judging in mixed martial art, as I've said before to you, it doesn't let for counter fighters to be able to be judged correctly, because even the aggression part, if somebody's a counter fighter and they are getting counters, that's being aggressive, even if they're a counter fighter.
Right.
I mean, the rules need to be, I think, explained to the judges a little bit better. But I mean, we're getting off topic on with the Bellator thing, so.
Yeah, but I actually think going back to the Bellator situation there, I think, remember in the past I've mentioned how I'm not a big fan of Bellator because of the tournament format, and it seems like that might have been a sticking point for them as well. They wanted to cling on to that tournament style of fighting, and not a lot of fans are really into that. I mean, there are fans who enjoy that, but I would say the majority of them don't. And then again, they moved away from that initial business model they had where they're developing their own talent. They had a lot of great up and coming Russian talent that was in there. And then all of a sudden they switched over. They said they were never going to take UFC fighters and UFC castaways. And they had a term, I can't remember if they said washed up UFC fighters. I don't remember what it was. But, they said they were never going to do that. But apparently they changed their mind because, again, they weren't able to even sell that one pay-per-view with Alvarez and Chandler. So, you mentioned earlier that maybe the numbers were fudged for the second pay-per-view, and I was actually totally surprised because I think the numbers I saw on that, I didn't read a whole lot and go into a whole lot of detail on it, but I thought I saw somewhere around 100,000 buys for that
Yeah,
pay-per-view.
that's what I
Totally,
had seen too. And somewhere
totally shocked me.
Dana White actually said something about them inflating the pay-per-view buys. That's why I had thought maybe that it was possible that they had done it.
You know, but
Right.
that seemed, maybe that's a problem for them too. Maybe the controlling shareholders now, as we found out. I wasn't even aware that Viacom owned a controlling percentage of the shares of Bellator. And maybe that was accumulated over time, and that's why it took them so long to make their move. But I wasn't even aware of that. But apparently, after the UFC signed the 7-year broadcast deal with the Fox Broadcasting Company, Viacom actually purchased a majority of the shares and the controlling percentage of the Bellator organization in late 2011. So it's been a while, according to what I'm reading out there today. But why would it take them so long to act when you could see over the last year and a half or so, Bellator has just been going down the tubes, in my
But I
opinion.
think the inconsistency, like you were saying, of what they said they were going to do and what they weren't going to do, I think the inconsistency in making plans for Bellator really didn't sit well with the board. And I didn't know that Viacom had controlling interest or taking so much stock in them either. But I could see it after the bad deal with the UFC on Spike with Tough and everything. Having Bellator come in as the replacement, I could see Viacom wanting to have more control over it, so they wouldn't have that kind of thing happen again in case Bellator did blow up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you're saying, because the UFC or Zuffa organization is a privately held organization. Yeah, there are shareholders in that organization, but that's within the articles of incorporation. When they set up the corporation, they say, okay, we're going to create this many shares, and here you go. This goes to this, that. But there are no public shares, so as long as they stay private, they'll have no problem, as far as being taken over. And again, it does look like a hostile takeover to me because when you have, Bjorn Rebney come out and say, it's bittersweet that he has to announce he's, leaving the company that he founded, that kind of pretty much says that, he's being kicked out on his ass.
You only need, I believe, 51%.
Yeah.
That gives you controlling share.
Yeah, it does.
And the votes, Viacom probably had the votes to do it. It's sad to see somebody lose their baby like that. But then again, when
and there was also some other
go,
talk out there about the way that he dealt with King Mo. I mean, didn't he have some sort of aggression between him and Mo in that last fight where he was dissing King Mo after the fight? And
who, Rampage?
No, Rebney.
Oh, Rebney? Oh, I'm not sure. I didn't really pay too much attention to that. I mean, Bellator was kind of a spectacle on stuff, and
especially when you have
that's one of the reasons I didn't pay too much attention to it.
When you have your fighters coming out speaking badly against the president and the organization, I mean, it's not just one fighter. We've seen more than a handful of fighters come out and talk bad about Bellator while the guys are employed by Bellator. We're under contract anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to have people, that aren't happy with the organization they're with. There's fighters in the UFC right now that aren't happy, but it is what it is. The problem is with Bellator is that Bjorn, I guess, wasn't smart enough to keep track of things and let himself get taken over. And it, like I said, it's sad to see somebody that built something from the ground up get it taken away. But that's more of a money grab than anything. And that's,
I actually went out and I did a little research, not a whole lot today, but I did a little research this morning. And apparently Bjorn was having a hard time keeping the company afloat because he had mortgaged his house 2 or 3 times. And then he started taking on partners, and then he partnered up with this other organization who was some sort of a investment firm. That investment firm hooked him up with Viacom. Then the guy quit his job at this investment firm to become the president or the chief operating officer over at Bellator. And now look where the guy is. Now he's out on his ass as well. So, more than likely, Bjorn was actually fit into that corner where he had to take on investors and he had to go public to keep the organization solvent. And that was his, I'm sure Viacom knew what they were doing all along, and that was probably their plan to eventually, buy out enough shares and take over the company altogether, which now it looks like the UFC clearly is not a monopoly, and they have big pocket investor and organization in Viacom as their main rival now. So we'll see what happens from this point forward. But I think it's a positive move for Bellator. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Obviously, they're supposed to be bringing Scott Coker in. That's supposed to be announced, rumored, of course. And, he didn't do too bad with Strikeforce. Strikeforce did have the tournaments as well. So
was he also involved in the Elite XC organization before they became the Strikeforce organization?
I'm not sure if he was or not. I thought he was friends with Dana White or something like that before before Strikeforce even.
I can't recall either. It's been so long. I mean, I was actually surprised that that organization went down as quick as they did because, shortly, I think it was like a year before they went down, I had written an article about them being around until at least 2015 because everything within the contract and agreements and everything they had going on, even after Zuffa did buy them out, they should have been around until 2015. But I guess what they did intentionally was kill off the organization so they could just move forward and dissolve it. And, I guess Zuffa actually wanted to just put that whole, thing behind them. And then who the hell knows? I mean, maybe
Yeah, I
they're,
think Showtime also was part of the reason why that didn't work out so well. They had a lot of issues with Showtime and airing it and
yeah.
how they played it
Well, you had
out.
everybody that wanted to be in control of the production. You had Zuffa who wanted to be in control. You had Strikeforce who wanted to be in control. And you had Showtime who wanted to be in control. And you can't have that many chiefs, and not have any Indians. You
No,
know what I mean?
no, yeah, only so many chefs in the kitchen, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think, I don't know, what do you think here? Is this a big loss for Bellator? Is it a big gain? What do you think?
As what?
As
As
far as,
losing these two?
yeah, as losing these two.
I think actually bringing Scott Coker in is going to be a big gain for him.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a big win for him because this guy didn't really seem born. He didn't seem, and I remember a couple of weeks ago when we did the Bellator 102 show or 120 show, whatever it was. I had that one MMA reporter, stop following me because I actually came out and said, "Come on, how do you take this organization seriously?" Well, apparently, I wasn't the only one who was feeling that way. You know? So
You know,
apparently, the shareholders were also feeling that way, and they wanted to make a change. So.
and with Scott Coker, he's got that background um, with Fedor's company M1 Global, so it's possible you never know it to see another co-promotion with them because if you're looking at the UFC, you've got a shit ton of Russian fighters coming in,
Yeah.
and they're good, and they're
Yeah.
going. I think we're going to see an influx of a lot of Russian fighters.
Yeah, I actually thought M1 was gone, but I went out the other day and I was checking out some events, and they're still around. So, I mean, who knows, man? We are seeing a lot of the Russian guys go to WSOF, Bellator, and then we're even seeing them come over to the UFC. So, I mean, with all those options outside of M1, and M1's kind of, a little more controlling, even more so than Bellator was. So who knows? I mean, maybe that organization will fold in the near future.
Yeah, but with Fedor alone, just Fedor's name, if they can bring him along, maybe
Well,
not
he's
in a
retired,
fighting
isn't
role.
he?
Yeah, but not. I think he's still competing, just not. I don't think he's competing
I think
in
maybe in Sambo,
strictly
but not in
MMA. I
MMA.
think I think he's competing in sambo um, events. But to have Fedor come in as maybe like the vice president or something like that of the corporation, just having Fedor's name in there, would actually get people more interested in it because Fedor,
Well, that's
Fedor's
probably going to
got
be tough
name.
because he's tied in with the M1 organization as
Yeah,
part
he
of
owns
ownership.
a quarter of it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's possible that dealing could be done. They want to get more fans. That's one way they could go about it. Because,
So
you
I
know,
honestly think, that might be a good idea to try and get him involved in the organization, but I don't see him ever coming back to MMA.
no, not in a fighting aspect.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
believe.
All right.
But
And so what do you think this is going to do for, the MMA world as a whole? Do you think this benefits MMA as a whole?
anytime if they do take the WWE aspect out of it, anytime you get rid of that aspect out of MMA is good for the whole. Um, I don't like it in the UFC. I don't like it. I didn't like it in Bellator. I'm more of a guy that likes the actual fighting aspect of it and less of the show aspect of it. Let the fights be the show. We don't need
Exactly.
as much drama.
Yeah,
There's
I
too
mean,
much
I don't
drama.
mind so much what Chael Sonnen was doing. It took me a while to get used to that because he wasn't that way in WC, and I don't mind so much some of the trash talk, but the silly theatrics and the stuff that what's his name does, the New York Badass, when he comes out with those glitter robes on, it's like, who
Hmm.
the fuck wants to see that in MMA? You know?
Yeah, I actually like Sonnen, and Sonnen is actually a great analyst on Fox.
Yeah.
I think he made a name for himself, and he knows the sport. He he makes a great analyst, and he would make a great ambassador for the UFC, even though he did have the WWE antics that he really made popular
In the UFC.
recently in the UFC.
But he did it on more of a classy level. It wasn't kind of like that
Well, he was funny.
sophomore type mentality that they do over at WWE. I
Yeah.
mean, to me, when I watched WWE, I used to watch with my two brothers, and it was more geared towards children, in my opinion. I know a lot of men
Mm.
watch it and probably get pissed at me for fucking saying that, but I just call it as I see it. To me, it was more of a sophomoric, maybe 15 and 16-year-old mentality that it was geared to. I mean, because how do you take that shit seriously?
Yeah. I mean, how can you take Tito and Rampage seriously when they're on TNA Impact as
Yeah,
well?
and that's what pissed off that writer when I said that. How do you take them seriously when you bring on, you know, Rampage Jackson and Tito Ortiz as your main pay-per-view? It's like, come on.
Yeah, just I mean, it's one thing when the UFC brought in Brock Lesnar, but he could fight somewhat. He just couldn't take a hit in the end. But
He never could take a hit.
but Brock Brock is a type of fighter that he he was a renaissance man. The guy was in the WWE. He took a stab at the NFL. He took a stab at MMA with the UFC, and he actually was champion for a short while.
Yeah,
And you know, if a WWE fighter comes over and actually legitimately competes, I have no problem with that.
me too. Me too. Like, who I like as far as a wrestling, entertainment wrestling type of personality? I actually like that. What's that big guy's name? Uh,
Batista.
no, no, the other guy, the black guy, Lashley, or
Oh, Bobby Lashley. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Bobby Lashley was actually, I believe, Olympic medalist or
Yeah, I
something.
really like that guy. He seems like a genuinely nice guy. I don't care if he was WWE or whatever. He seems like a nice guy. He's really into his grappling, from what I understand, and the submission game is getting a little bit better. So maybe if he can lose some of that muscle mass and actually
Mm.
learn a little more groundwork, I think he'll do a little better. Because I actually expected him to be just as good as Brock when he came over to fighting in MMA, but didn't pan out for him. He actually took a step down and started
Mm.
fighting in C-tier organizations, which was a good move for him because that gave him time to actually develop his skills more than jumping right into things like Brock did. Because Brock jumping right into things the way he did, yeah, he looked good, but come on, he fought a couple of undersized guys who were over the hill. Who was the other guy that he fought? Didn't he fight Hongman Choi or some ridiculous fighter?
Uh, I think he fought. I know he fought Frank Mir twice. He fought Heath Herring. Um, let's see,
An
lost to
undersized
Kane
Randy Couture.
and Randy Couture, Kane, and
Overeem.
Shane Carwin.
He fought
Uh,
Overeem too, right?
yeah, he fought over him as well. And I think there might be one more guy,
Uh,
but it's passing me by. I know he was only like five
unknown.
and four in his career.
Yeah. But when he comes over and he was fighting all those guys that weren't really. I mean, I hate to say it, Randy Couture wasn't top shelf, but at that time he wasn't, and also he was fighting an undersized man. I mean, he looked like Jesus. He was twice the size of Couture, and I thought Couture was actually doing well up against the cage with that
Oh,
Roman Greco wrestling, and until he took those couple of shots, and then it was all over. But I was never a big fan of Brock Lesnar, but I don't think we'll be seeing him back anytime soon.
no, that diverticulitis doesn't allow him to train. I think he's got to go now. Yeah, Min Soo Kim is was his first fight.
Yeah. All right. So.
But that was in Dynamite. That wasn't actually UFC.
Yeah. All right. So summing up this whole Bellator situation here, Rebney and Danaher are out. Rumors are that Scott Coker may be replacing them. We probably won't know anything until later tonight or tomorrow. That'll be Thursday. And then I think we both pretty much agree that would be a good thing for the organization, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a good thing. It sucks to see people forced out of their own companies, but,
Yeah.
If you don't try and maintain that 51%, shit's going to happen like that.
Yeah, we both agree that, Rebney and Danaher going out is actually a plus and a positive for Bellator, correct?
Yeah, and with the news, you might see more MMA fans take interest in it, hearing about Scott Coker going over there.
Right, and for, again, the final...
Possibly. Possibly. I said possibly Scott Coker going over there. It hasn't been officially announced yet.
No, I think that's where it's going to go, though, because, like I said, Josh Gross came out and said he heard that he was signed to the organization. So what does that tell you, Yeah. Probably more than likely he will become the president and CEO. And also, I think you and I both agree that this is going to be a positive as far as the MMA industry as a whole, being that, they're going to try to more than likely clean up the entertainment aspect that has been creeping into Bellator MMA. So far, everything, it looks like this is going to be a big positive for the Bellator organization. And again, I was one of those people who actually put WSOF above Bellator as far as, B and C2 organizations because of the fact that WSOF approaches things in more of a traditional MMA format as opposed to Bellator. So that'll probably be Bellator giving WSOF a little bit of a challenge now that they're probably going to return to their roots. All right, any other comments on this, buddy?
I'm curious to see the direction they're going to go. It'll be interesting, and the news actually gives me more interest in Bellator right now.
Yeah. Okay. I'm not going to do any post-production on this. As soon as we get done with this, all we got to do is wait for YouTube to render it, and then I posted it already on the site, so it should become available probably within 30 minutes or so. And I guess what we'll do is we'll wrap up this version of Making MMA News of the MMA Live Chat Show. And I want to thank you again for showing up, buddy, and joining me to do the show really quick-like.
Thanks for having me, Rich.
All right, buddy. We'll see you next time.
Take it easy, bud.
Bye-bye.